Hi, hello, welcome back to my channel. I'm reviewing The Claws of Axos. It's an interesting one. So, I have a confession. When I was like, I don't know, between like the ages of 10 and 13, I would Google classic Doctor Who on YouTube, and I'd watch them illegally. Well, I don't know if it was illegal because like I didn't put them on there, but I just need a moment. And one of them I watched was called The Claws of Axos. There are others: Claws of Axos, Pyramids of Mars, Seeds of Doom. Those are the three that popped to mind. I think I always watched the War Games back then. Funny enough, I have three of those in my collection. I don't think I have Seeds of... Hang on. No, I have all four of those apart from Seeds of Doom. So I'll put that on my little list. Oh, The Sea Devils. Watch that one as well. I also have that one. I have fond memories of this story, and I always will because it's nostalgic. Because I remember as a kid being like, oh, I know I was like, oh, I'm watching classic Doctor Who, and I didn't hate it as a kid either. I didn't find it boring. I thought it was interesting. And back before I was thinking about production design and budget and casting, like before I was thinking of these things, I was like, oh, Doctor Who, and I didn't care what it was. I didn't care if I didn't understand what was happening because I didn't understand what was happening in this story back when I watched it when I was like 12 years old. Uh, but I enjoyed it. So I was sitting down rewatching it, and I was disappointed that it's not that great. I want to talk about, before I forget, before I want to sound all fancy, I think the sort of theme of like the hatred of outsiders in the first episode I think is really cool because Chin, oh, the character of Chin kind of represents that. You know, his first instinct is let's destroy the ship, and that clip which was going around for a while, I think in the last couple of years with the whole Doctor Who's SJW discussion, which I'll just say now I firmly disagree with. A lot of people throw that around, along with the Daleks, like just as a concept of Doctor Who's always been political. So, and it is actually a really good scene in context as well, and I think it's an interesting moment for the Third Doctor because at this point I'd really only in my teenhood, I'd only really watched this from Planet of the Spiders, and it was probably the angriest I don't know who we are, the angriest I'd seen him, and I think Pertwee's Doctor's really good at being angry. It doesn't seem like, oh, the writer was like, be angry this week. It felt like, oh, he's angry. And by the way, it's a bit of a shame. Obviously, Chin's a massive arse hat for the rest of the story, but apart from that, that kind of idea of the fear of outsiders is, it's kind of gone. The whole British values thing sticks around, but I feel like the story obviously becomes a bit more focused on the actual plot rather than commentary. So, but I was speaking of the Doctor, John Pertwee's performance here is really good, and I've realised again. I'm not going to spoil too many movies. Obviously, I have 6 of his DVDs. 5 of them I've watched. I haven't watched Carnival of Monsters. Uh, and then we just go down there. There's Doctor Who and the Silurians, Inferno, Claws of Axos, the Sea Devils, and then Planet of the Spiders. And I'm going to be honest, I've realised, despite knowing a lot more about his genre when I was a kid, because obviously it's really him and the Fourth Doctor are the ones that I watched, because there were other bits and pieces I saw as a kid. As an adult, I don't think, a huge fan of the style of the Pertwee era. However, I think it's quite easy to say, I think his Doctor is one of my favourites. It's really weird. Like, I don't generally like his episodes, but I actually really like him. He's one of the most believable, I think, as a real person. And I don't know. I really liked him. I really liked him in this story. I thought he was great. Oh, Jo. Katie Manning. If you don't follow Katie Manning on Twitter, you need to follow Katie Manning on Twitter. You can just tell how much she loves the franchise. It's people like Katie Manning and John Barrowman who are like, yeah, they're not in Doctor Who anymore, but they are like completely fine with a lot of their career being like, oh, when you were on Doctor Who and going to Doctor Who conventions, because they love the show. And she does, she does Big Finish. She was excellent in the game Doctor Who Infinity. She was great in the Serial Adventures. And I'm listing these things because I want to preface, like, I really like Katie Manning. I actually like Jo Grant. And I'll get into it. I really like her in the Sea Devils when I get into that. But in this story, because I didn't mention, this is season 8. So this is Jo's first season. She's very much just there to scream and ask questions. And also, there's a lot of instances where she'll be like, Doctor, this. And the Doctor's like, yeah, I already know. I figured that out last episode. I don't know, it's quite funny. She really has no point in this episode. Like, I put in my blog, like, you could remove her, like, say she's on holiday visiting her uncle, I don't know. And that's about it. She wears an outfit that's got an action figure, though. So that's nice. Filer is an interesting... He's like a pseudo-companion, and I compared him, and I will compare him to, again, Harry Sullivan. He's kind of like an early Harry Sullivan. As far as I know, I don't think he appeared in any stories prior to this, because he's like brought in, he wants to know more about the Master, because obviously the Master was in every story this season, he was a big part of it. And I don't think he appears again afterwards. But he was kind of, I liked that he was a bit of an antithesis to Jo. He was like, I'm an action man, I'm gonna shoot and I'm gonna do things, but almost like the other direction. And I quite liked him. I feel like if they'd made him like a companion, I would have been like, all right, okay, cool. Especially as this season is entirely set on Earth, like they could have just been like, oh, he's transferred to Unit. It's entirely set on Earth. Okay, I think there is a story that isn't set on Earth. No, wait. I don't know. I've forgotten. Yeah, Chin's an arse hat. That's his character. And he's not meant to be like 3-dimensional. That's not what he's meant to be. He's meant to be this thing. Wow, how descriptive. He's meant to be a character you don't like, and he's meant to be an obstacle. The Brigadier, Yates, and Benton are all in this, but none of them really do that much. Obviously, the Brigadier gets arrested. Benton and Yates, they could easily just be like random soldiers. I don't know. I think I'll probably find this. The constraints of like Unit basically being in every story does mean you're going to get stories where Unit isn't. Not that they don't need to be there. Like for plot reasons, it's quite helpful they're there. But like, they don't need to be interesting. They don't need to have like the individual characters of Unit don't need to actually have character. Like, And this just happened to be a story where, in my opinion, Unit wasn't intriguing. The Master, played by the late Roger Delgado, the original, you might say, and he's quite good. I think the problem with this is of all of, like, I know a lot about the stories. Obviously, I don't know everything about them, but this is the only one I think where he's not really like the main antagonist, or at least he's very clearly a subsidiary. Like he's under the Axos' thumb, or their eye, I guess, but he spends the entire story just trying to get away from them. So, I don't know. I find it funny that apparently he had a prosthetic mask, just ready to put on. And him and the Doctor's interactions are good. Like, the Roger Delgado and John Pertwee have great chemistry. That's probably why they are, will probably always be, to me, one of the most iconic Doctor Master duos. Obviously, aside from the fact that they were the first, and also they spend a large amount of time together. And then you got, Anthony Ainley doesn't even really have an iconic duo because he was going through the Doctors, wasn't he? Axos. Axos are a really cool villain. But they are the sort of the epicenter of why I don't like this episode. In that their plot, the Axos' plot, its plan, it changes. Sometimes not making any sense. like when, when it sends all the axons to the power plant, but it's already at this point decided it's much more interested in learning the secrets to time travel than it is to absorbing power from the power plant. So then you're just like, so why are you sending axons there? What? I don't know. And also, they are OP. Like, sometimes they could, like, blast things with their tendrils, and then other times, conveniently, when the plot called for it, they couldn't. Their skill set was undefined. Or ill-defined, at least. The set of how Axos looked, like, the chroma key technique, which is obviously what we, like, call green screen, was very new to Doctor Who. I think it was introduced to Doctor Who in the Silurians, if my Doctor Who trivia is correct. So it was literally it'd been like a year in use. So it stopped, pardon me, was it Inferno that was the first time they used it? It was something like that. It was about a year they'd been using it. And, why are they always using rappers around? There's dodgy moments, let's just say that. Especially with the eye, like the Axos eye. Sometimes there's like bits of it that just phase out because the green screen, or the blue screen it probably would have been back then, has like gone wrong. So yeah, but the actual sets looked cool. There was one that had like a moving floor, like a funhouse. It did look really organic. And they used quite a lot of different sets, like the rest of the episode isn't very visually interesting. It's set on Earth, that the buildings are all grey. That's another problem I have with the John Pertwee era just generally, is I don't think the visuals tend to be that interesting, at least on the Earth-based stories. But it was a nice contrast to that, and like I said, it was interesting. They used so many different sets, or at least dressed sets up differently. And also appearance of like the axons, like their tentacly form, they were gross. They are just gross. I don't want to see them. They're disgusting. To be frank, they're disgusting. One of my big plot issues with this story and with Axos, and I think if you change this, I think the story just gets monumentally better, is the fact that from the get-go, the axons and Axos don't come in peace, because it takes that, like, that, what was he again? Was he homeless? I can't remember. But it just takes that man, and you're just like, oh, okay, so it's not friendly. Like, it should have been like The Gift from the Stolen Adventures, where you generally think at first the Blathereen might be good, because they haven't given you any reason to not think they're good yet. But the Axons immediately say, well, no. And they spend too long in the story thinking they're good. Maybe... How would I improve this story? Before I sort of get into what I improve about it, the effect of the face, like that guy's face melting after Axos drained him everything it wanted, was really gross. Like sometimes the visuals in this story are really good, but the reason it's gonna be getting quite a low rating for me anyway, is I think the story is actually too short, which is very weird for the classic series. I think it should have been a 6-parter, and I think they should have stretched things out. I think Axons, you shouldn't have known at the first where their allegiances lied. I think give Unit more to do. I think give Jo more to do. I think give the Master more to do, because the Master didn't really shine. Like, he was still great, but I've watched the Sea Devils, and I'm certain when I get through the rest of Roger Delgado's, stories, it's probably not up there with the best, because he doesn't really get a spotlight. Chin, I don't actually mind Chin being two-dimensional, because that's what he's meant to be. It's a deliberate choice, which I can respect. The resolution is really rushed. The whole time loop thing is introduced like a minute before it happens, and I guess it's one of those things. There's no leader. There's no way you can predict that that's going to happen. There's no way. So, for reference, I've just watched Can You Hear Me Today. I'm sorry, I'm just moving something. For reference, I've just watched Can You Hear Me Today. It just came out today. And although I'll get into my review of that, why the resolution is kind of rushed, not a great resolution to the story, at least, like, they work in a lot of elements. They work in, like, 3 different elements from that have been introduced in the story. So although I couldn't predict it because I didn't predict that it'd be that, and again, that unexplained of a resolution, at least I'm like, well, they didn't just pull it out of nowhere. The whole time loop thing literally comes out of nowhere. This isn't a time travel story until the last episode. But what can I say? What can I say? There's a lot of things I would have changed, but I will always look at this fondly just because of the nostalgia and the connection it has with me personally. I'm giving it a 6. In my blog, I gave it 5.5. 5.5 is too harsh. I'm giving it a 6. Yes, I'm gonna give it a 6. And I know people screaming. I gave Orphan 55 a 6.5. Okay, but at least it entertained me for 50 minutes. And there were lots of redeeming features in that story. I just think it didn't come together, and I think the editing room killed it. So I think people will be like up in outrage that I gave Claws of Axos less than Orphan 55. But that's my opinion. Please respect it. And yeah, I'll say it again, that I just think the Pertwee era isn't really geared to me, at least the early Pertwee. Well, even Planet of the Spiders. I just don't think that 5 years of Doctor Who is ever going to be my favourite. So that's just that. So, my next classic review will be The Brain of Morbius next week. Thank you for watching, Jo-Anarchists. Oh, my back!